Hello, Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, everyone. I would like to continue with my topic, reflections on the verses of the Holy Qur'an. Remember the last time we started discussing the ambiguity of some verses of the Holy Qur'an and the clarity of others. The Holy Qur'an is mainly divided into two main divisions. As stated in the chapter Al Imran, or the family of Imran, where the Almighty Allah said, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات هن أم الكتاب وأخر متشابهات. That he is the one who revealed to you the scripture, and part of it, that is some verse, part of it constitute verses that are precise in meaning and others ambiguous. So we started discussing, we provided examples of some ambiguous verses in the Holy Quran, verses whose understanding requires vast knowledge. In fact, we gave example of some verses that are literally ambiguous, others that are conceptually ambiguous. And since we have delved into the ambiguity of some verses of the Holy Quran, in connection with this, I recently watched a clip on Facebook, a video clip in which somebody from Nigeria that seemed to be of the elite class, and in fact he is a retired general, as he was said to be. As I saw some inscription indicating that, on the clip. And he said that I read the Quran. Let me use his own tonation. I read the Quran, and I did not see where Muslims are allowed to marry underage. But Northerners do that, according to him. That means that goes a long way in explaining to you how some people have taken the Holy Quran for granted, that you could just buy a copy, a translated copy of the Holy Book from the market, just like you buy a newspaper or a magazine, you read and understand. Just as simple as this. And they forget the fact that even the constitution of their countries, that's wherever they may be, whichever country they belong to, sometimes some part of the constitution might be too technical for even some lawyers to understand, that they need to take it to the court demanding explanation of some section of the constitution. Many a time you hear about cases involving the executive arm of government and the legislative arm of government going to court seeking interpretation of a particular section of the constitution. That shows you how technical it is. If the constitution that was authored by human beings, which was, ideas put together by human beings that are fallible, that they can make mistakes, but it is so technical for common understanding that it requires the intervention of the court. That tells you that the Holy Quran is far, far above that. So, about the ambiguity of some verses, the Holy Quran, many a times you come across verses that tell us that the Almighty Allah did this so as to know who are true believers and who are not. For instance, the chapter Surah Al-Ankabut, where the Almighty Allah said that Alif Lam Mim hasiban nasu an yutraku an yaqulu amanna wa hum la yuftanun wa laqad fatanna alladhina min qablihim fala ya'lamanna Allahu alladhina sadaqu wa la ya'lamanna al-kadhibin. Alif Lam Mim. Do men ever suppose that once they said we are believers, They'll be left alone without testing them. Certainly you have tested those who came before them, so that the Almighty Allah. So the word used here, فَلَيَعْلَمَنَّ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا, so that the Almighty Allah would know those who are true believers and those who are not. At a superficial understanding, it may give an impression that the Almighty Allah needs to test for him to know those who are true believers and those who are not. Because the word used here, فَلَيَعْلَمَنَّ اللَّهُ, so that the Almighty Allah will certainly know those الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا, those who are true believers, وَلَيَعْلَمَنَّ الْكَاذِبِينَ, those who are not, those who are liars in their claim of being believers. Here you can see that literal meaning of this verse indicates that the Almighty Allah needed to test for him to know who are true believers and who are not. And this is not consistent with the principles of Islamic theology, that the knowledge of the Almighty Allah is omniscience, that it knows everything. It requires no test. The Almighty Allah needs not to test anything for him to know. So scholars of Quranic exegesis will find themselves in a very difficult situation. The only way out for them here is to interpret the word not according to its literal meaning. They need to give it a technical meaning, a conceptual meaning, that what the Almighty Allah means here is to bring out the knowledge he already had. He will test them so as to bring out to the common knowledge that these are true believers, and those who prove to be otherwise will be exposed to common knowledge that they are not true believers. This is the only way it can be understood as it ought to be. And there are instances, there are quite a number of instances of these verses in the Holy Qur'an. There's something in the chapter Surah Al Imran where the Almighty Allah said, while discussing the issue of the battle of Uhud, he said, أَمَا سِبْتُمْ أَن تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةَ وَلَمَّا يَعْلَمِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا مِنكُمْ وَيَعْلَمَ الصَّابِرِينَ. Why he said, وَمَا كَانَ نَفْسٍ أَن تَمُوتَ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ كِتَابًا مُؤَجَّلًا وَمَن يُرِدْ ثَوَابَ الدُّنْيَا مِنْهَا وَمَن يُرِدْ ثَوَابَ الْآخِرَةِ مِنْهَا فَسَيَجْزِي الشَّاكِرِينَ. وكأن من نبي قتل معه ربيون كثير فما وهنوا لما أصابهم في سبيل الله وما ضعفوا وما استكانوا والله يحب الصابرين وما كان قولهم وليعلم الله الذين آمنوا ويتخذ منكم شهداء. إن يمسسهم قرح فقد مس قوم قرح مثله وتلك الأيام نداولها بين الناس وليعلم الله الذين آمنوا منكم ويتخذ منكم شهداء. That if you are afflicted with injuries and wounds in the course of fighting the war of Uhud, you should know that the Meccan pagans too were equally afflicted with the same degree of wounds and injuries in the last battle of Badr that you fought against them. The days of victory are being circulated, that is, the days of victory are being put in such a way that the Almighty Allah will allow the believers to have victory today, and tomorrow the unbelievers will have victory. As if a question is asked, why should the Almighty Allah allow his enemies to have a temporary victory? Although as temporary as it is, why should they have in the first place against the vanguard of the Almighty Allah? He said, وَلِيَعْلَمَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَيَتَّخِذَ مِنْكُمْ شُهَدَاءَ. So that the Almighty Allah would know those who are true believers among you, and He will take those who are martyrs. Those who are destined to be martyrs will be taken in the course of fighting the war, so that they will achieve martyrdom. Here you can see the Almighty Allah said, so that He will know, وَلِيَعْلَمَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. If you interpret this in its literal sense, that the Almighty Allah would know, that means that He previously didn't know before the test, but He brought about the test and the affliction, so as to bring out, so as to know who are true believers and who are liars in their claim of being believers. Here you can see how ambiguous such verses are, and they require deep knowledge of Quranic sciences for somebody to know the Islamic theology, the Islamic monotheism, the principles, the fundamentals, and how it has been applied, and so on and so forth. Things that are obligatorily ascribed to the Almighty Allah, things that can in no way be ascribed to Him. The Almighty Allah is far away from them. Things that may be ascribed, that is, they may apply to the Almighty and they may not. That the thing that the Almighty Allah leave for Himself the liberty to do the way He wants. For instance, Allah, for instance, all the attributes of perfection are necessary for divinity. All attributes of perfection are necessary for divinity. That is, they must be ascribed to the Almighty Allah. Because the Almighty Allah says, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى هو العزيز الحكيم. That all attributes of clemency belong to the Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is that. And all attributes of defects must be kept away from the Almighty Allah, either in His essence, in His attributes, or in His name subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what refers to matters of divine actions, for instance, whether we do it or not, that one is called that is what the Almighty Allah left for Himself the liberty to choose whether to do or not. The first one, the necessary attributes for divinity are called ma yajibu alallahi ta'ala. Those that must necessarily be kept away from Him because they do not apply to divinity are called ma yastahilu fi haqqillahi ta'ala. And those He leave Himself the choice to do or not to do are called ma yajuzu fi haqqi ta'ala. And that is that. So unless somebody has mastery of the knowledge of Tawheed, he cannot interpret some verse of the Holy Qur'an. Otherwise, he's bound to make mistakes, because this led to the emergence of some, because of the paradox and the ambiguity of some verses. Some Islamic devious sects emerged on that basis. There were sects that denied the omniscience to the Almighty Allah, all in an attempt to present the Almighty Allah as a fair and just Lord. They said, for instance, we know the history of the emergence of Islamic devious sects. One thing led to another. First and foremost, there is a tradition that was rendered by Imam Tirmidhi in his collection, where the Prophet ﷺ said, افترقت اليهود على 71 فرقة وافترقت النصارى على 72 فرقة وستفترق أمتي على 73 فرقة كلها في النار إلا واحدة إلى ما هي يا رسول الله قال هي تكون على ما أنا عليه وأصحابي اليوم. That the Jews divided themselves after the departure of Moses until they reach 71 number, that is, they become 71 sects after the departure of Moses. Christians got divided into 72 sects after Jesus Christ. And after my departure, my ummah also will be divided into 73 sects. All 72 sects, if care is not taken, that is, except if they may have by chance of providence of the Almighty Allah, or intercession by His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or by some verses of the Holy, chapters of the Holy Qur'an or some righteous deed they did, except if there is an intervention, otherwise they will go to hellfire. At least if they may end up in paradise, later they will still visit hellfire. Kullu fi nar illa wahid, except one. They say, which one is that, O our dear Prophet? He said, وَهِيَ الَّتِي تَكُونُ عَلَى مَا أَنَا عَلَيْهِ وَأَصْحَابِي الْيَوْمَ. It is the one that will remain firm on what I am today, along with my companions. And of course, not sooner did the Prophet ﷺ depart, such sects started to emerge. Argument among Muslims community started about leadership. That's after the part of the Prophet ﷺ, who will assume the office of the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, who is going to take over the leadership of the Muslim community after the demise of our dear Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him. That was the first argument, the first major argument. I'm not talking about juristic differences or juristic arguments. That one was on individual basis. That one of the companions might take a particular position with regard to a particular injunction in the Holy Qur'an on the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. That one is taken as individual differences. But the major difference that divided the Ummah was after the report of the Prophet ﷺ, who will assume the office of leadership. And that one is natural. After all, because the Prophet ﷺ departed, the Prophet ﷺ, what he did was to build institutions. Remember, he was the only prophet that was born into a community that did not even have political leadership. Mecca, as at the time he was born, there was no king of Mecca. There was no king of Quraysh. What they had was a loose arrangement of power, of leadership, where you have the heads of clans, of different clans of Quraysh, forming the leadership of the community. But they don't have a central political leadership. That is why when they reconstruct the Holy Kaaba, when they reconstructed the Holy Kaaba, when they come to place back the black stone where it was before the before the that is before the that's before even before they embark on the project of reconstruction, the black stone was in a particular position as it is today. So now as they wanted to reconstruct the Holy Kaaba, they must return the black stone where it was. So it led to an argument as to who was supposed to place it back, because they wouldn't allow the head of any clan to place it back. If they do, that means they conceded leadership to that particular person, and they did not want to do that. So you can see the difficulties the Prophet ﷺ encountered, a society that couldn't even come to terms with the concept of leadership, a society that could not concede to a single person to lead, yet he was sent to that society. That is why the community in which the Prophet ﷺ was born and raised, and the community that received him, was the most difficult human community when it comes to bringing them together under one leadership. That's why the tax of the Prophet ﷺ was the most difficult than any other tax. Take, for example, the children of Israel. Even before before Prophet Moses was born, they knew that he was to be born. And when he emerged as a natural leader. None of them disputed his emergence as a leader, because after all, he was the one that delivered them from Pharaoh. Although he suffered a lot at their hands when they were delivered, after they were delivered. But in the case of the Prophet ﷺ, you can see here To even allow one and single person to take the black stone and returning where it was, that means to them a concession, that they consider leadership to that person in question, and they were not ready to do that. So when the Prophet ﷺ came in fact, the oldest man among them as at that time was Abu Umayyah ibn Mughira. He told them that you don't have to go to war on this. What you do, let's keep quiet and sit down here and wait. Whoever come in, let's allow him to judge between us. As they were sitting there, our dear Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, at the age of 35, came in. As at that time, he was not yet appointed a prophet. When he came in, they all shouted in happiness, Muhammadul Amin, Muhammadul Amin. We are happy. In fact, we agree to whatever judgment that you can give. He said, what's the matter? He told him. Then he brought out his upper, that is his own upper mantle, the mantle that he put on his neck. He spread it, and he asked them to take the black stone and put it on that mantle. He asked all the leaders of the clans, heads of the clans, each one of them should hold part of that mantle, and let them all take it back to where it was. When it was taken there, he put his two hands and took it off the mantle and placed it back where it was. And nobody argued that you are Quraysh. That means we have considered leadership to you. No. They kept quiet and they agreed. So the challenges of the Prophet ﷺ was to build an ideal Muslim community with strong institutions so that leadership will emerge naturally. They didn't have to argue as to who will emerge. For instance, that's why he took them little by little, giving them hints on who should lead. We all know that he spent days in sickness before his demise. So during those days, he used to attend the congregational prayer. I used to lead them in prayer. But when the sickness was too much for him to come out, he assigned Abu Bakr to take his place in conducting the Muslim community in prayers. And up to the time he departed, peace and blessing be upon him, Abu Bakr was the one leading them in prayer. So that was considered as an indication that Abu Bakr should be the one to take over. Although he did not explicitly appoint anybody. After his departure, peace and blessing be upon him, some of the companions gathered together, that is the indigenous Muslims of Medina gathered at a place called Saqifatu Bani Sa'ida, discussing. In fact, they were trying to appoint their leader as the sole caliph of the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him. As the news reached to the companions of the Prophet, Abu Bakr and Umar, they went along with Abu Ubaidah. As they went there, they were asked, so they asked what is the matter, and they were told. So they engaged the indigenous Muslim of Medina, in debate, and they won the debate at the end of the day in favor of the Muhajirun. Abu Bakr was appointed. Although Abu Bakr engaged in the debate to convince them to allow one of the Muhajirun to lead, not him. That is why at the end of the debate he told them that I can agree for you to choose either of these two gentlemen. Umar ibn al-Khattab, a person with whom the Almighty Allah strengthened Islam, or Abu Ubaidah, a person referred to by the Prophet as the most trusted person in this ummah. Whomsoever you choose, I am okay by him. Umar said, no. No one can lead when you are around, because the Prophet ﷺ did not die accidentally. During the period of his sickness, he appointed you to lead us in prayer. That means that other things come secondary to the prayer. So we decide, of course, you should be the one to lead. And that's how Umar gave his allegiance to Abu Bakr, and the remaining companions followed suit. those who were around there, went to the mosque, and more Muslims kept coming in to swear their allegiance to him. So this is a very important thing for us to understand, that difference in understanding some verses, most especially those with ambiguity, led to the emergence of so many sects. And I think I have to stop here because of the time factor. When I come back, I will continue exactly where I stopped. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق والخاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق والهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله أقدم العظيم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون السلام عليكم.